Wow. Okay. So for this deep dive, you've given me quite the collection of cybersecurity news,
Yeah.
articles, reports, even some like alarming social media buzz.
Yeah,
So it's clear that the last few weeks have been pretty wild in the cybersecurity world.
absolutely. And I think what's fascinating to me is how many of these stories end up coming down to human error
Right.
or complacency, those classic vulnerabilities, even when we're dealing with all this cutting edge technology.
Right. It's ironic, right? We have a bank CEO falling for a pig butchering scam.
Yeah,
We'll get into what that even is a little bit later. And
definitely.
then deep fakes are showing up in middle schools.
Yeah.
And then there's news that your office security badge could be hacked in just minutes.
Oh, and of course, the CMMC updates, which are critical for anyone working with government contracts.
Yeah.
Things are changing rapidly, the stakes are high.
Okay, so before we jump too far ahead, let's unpack some of these data breaches that have been happening, starting with the city of Columbus, which is in some hot water. After initially denying that any data was stolen,
Right.
they've now admitted that hackers did access some pretty sensitive information,
Mm-hmm.
including a prosecutor's database.
Wow.
So that potentially puts victims' lives at risk.
Yeah, it really raises questions about cybersecurity preparedness, especially at the local government level. I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
Columbus is just one of 50 cities that have been hacked just this year.
50.
Yeah,
That is a lot, and it's not just cities.
right.
Right. We're seeing companies that handle incredibly sensitive information making some really basic security blunders.
Yeah, well, a perfect example is Records Check, Net.
Yeah.
They actually exposed usernames and passwords for their administrators, and here's the kicker.
Okay.
This site is linked to NPD, which handles sensitive background check data.
Wow, what a security failure.
Right.
I mean, it really makes you wonder about priorities when a company that deals with such personal data makes such an elementary mistake.
Well-
And speaking of sensitive data that's at risk, the FAA is proposing new cybersecurity rules for airplanes.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, nobody wants to be on a hacked plane.
No, they don't.
But it's interesting, though, how the FAA is trying to kind of soften the language around this issue.
Yes.
So instead of calling them hacks, they're using the term IUEIs,
Right.
which stands for Intentional Unauthorized Electronic Interactions.
Mhm.
But it feels like you're trying to downplay the threat, doesn't it?
Yeah, a little bit.
But, like sugarcoating it doesn't make the threat go away.
No, it doesn't?
And it's not just airplanes. Over 40,000 industrial control systems in the U.S. are exposed to the internet.
It's scary.
That means the systems that control our water, our power grid,
Yeah.
a lot of them don't even have proper authentication.
Which takes us back to the Colonial Pipeline hack. Remember that a while back?
Yeah.
How disruptive that was? It's a stark reminder of how vulnerable our critical infrastructure is to these kinds of attacks.
Okay, so we have cities, we have companies, airplanes, and critical infrastructure, all facing some pretty serious threats.
Yeah.
But let's bring this a little closer to home.
Okay.
Have you ever thought about how much information you personally share online?
All the time.
I mean, think about FlightAware,
Yeah.
the flight tracking website.
Right.
They just had a data exposure incident.
Oh, wow.
Potentially leaked social security numbers and passwords for 10 million monthly visitors.
Really?
This really highlights the growing tension between convenience and security
Yeah.
in our increasingly digital lives.
Mhm.
We're constantly trading bits of personal information just to access services and information.
All the time.
Makes you wonder, are we giving away too much?
That is the question, isn't it?
It is a great question, and it seems like companies aren't always doing their best to protect the data that we entrust to them.
True.
So let's move on from that and dive into the world of scams and cybercrime,
Ah,
because things are getting pretty sneaky out there.
Af-
We mentioned earlier a bank CEO falling for a pig butchering scam,
Right.
which honestly, when I first heard that term, I thought it sounded like something out of a horror movie.
Yeah, it's disturbingly apt, unfortunately.
I don't know.
Pig butchering scams are a type of romance scam where the scammer will cultivate a relationship with the victim over time,
Okay.
building trust, and then they'll ultimately butcher them financially.
So they're basically fattening up the victim with attention and affection before they, like, strike when they least expect it.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And they're incredibly effective because they prey on human vulnerability. They use sophisticated psychological manipulation
Yeah.
to exploit their victims.
It's a reminder that anyone can fall victim to a scam, no matter how intelligent they are or how successful they are.
That's right.
It can happen to anyone.
Anyone.
Keeping your systems safe is super important as businesses rely more and more on digital systems, and that's where turnkey cybersecurity can really help.
Yeah, we're here to help small businesses just like yours make sure they're safe and sound in this crazy world of cybersecurity. And we offer a whole suite of services specifically tailored for you. So that's ensuring CMMC compliance and doing penetration testing. We also run vulnerability scans, and we can help you develop a comprehensive risk assessment.
And it doesn't stop there, right?
No, it doesn't.
We handle incident response, should the unfortunate happen, and we guide you through migrations like GCC. We just want to make sure your transitions are smooth and that you're secure.
It's all about peace of mind, right? You focus on what you do best, running your business, and we'll make sure that your digital world is safe and sound.
Okay, and while we're talking about manipulation, let's talk about deepfakes.
Okay.
The San Francisco city attorney is actually suing websites that create and distribute non-consensual AI-generated pornography. That's often used for bullying and extortion.
It's a huge problem.
This technology has the potential to be absolutely devastating, especially for women and girls.
Yes.
I mean, imagine the emotional and reputational damage that can be inflicted when someone's likeness is used in explicit content without their consent.
Right. It's a nightmare.
It's scary, and the legal and ethical challenges of combating deepfakes are just immense.
Yeah.
It feels like we're constantly playing catch-up with technology.
It's a good way to put it. It's this constant game of cat and mouse.
Yeah.
As technology evolves and we try to mitigate those risks.
Okay, so we've covered data breaches, scams, and the dark side of AI.
Yeah.
So now let's look at some emerging technologies and security measures that are trying to help fight back against these threats.
Okay.
Let's start with something close to home, your office security badge.
Sure.
Apparently, a backdoor was discovered in millions of contactless cards made by Shanghai Fudan Microelectronics Group.
Mm-hmm.
This vulnerability allows attackers to clone cards in minutes.
Wow, that's all it takes.
So, think about your own workplace. What type of security badge does your office use?
Yeah,
If it's one of those contactless cards, it raises some important questions.
sure does.
What steps can your company take to mitigate this risk?
Yeah, because nobody wants to be responsible for letting some cyber criminal waltz right into their office.
Oh, exactly.
But fortunately, there are things companies can do.
Okay, good.
We'll dive into that.
Before we get into that, though, let's talk about a new development in the smartphone world, the Google Pixel 9,
Yes,
which has this new satellite SOS feature.
that's cool.
This is part of a growing trend of satellite connectivity in smartphones.
As.
And it has the potential to really make a difference for personal safety, especially in emergencies
Absolutely.
or when traditional cellular networks are unavailable.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to think that your phone could actually become a lifeline in a remote area or during a natural disaster.
Absolutely. But while we're talking about the future, we can't forget about the looming threat posed by quantum computers. So NIST is releasing these new encryption algorithms that are designed to withstand attacks from these future supercomputers.
Yeah, which is really important because if you think about it,
Yeah.
quantum computers have the potential to render our current encryption methods completely obsolete
Right.
because of their immense computing power.
So imagine a world where all of our digital secrets can be unlocked basically instantly.
It's kind of terrifying, isn't it?
It is a little scary. So are we basically in a race against time to develop this quantum-resistant encryption
Yeah.
before bad actors can get their hands on a quantum supercomputer?
In a sense, yes.
Okay.
NIST's new algorithms are definitely a positive step, but this transition to quantum-resistant encryption is going to be very complex,
Okay.
and it's going to be challenging.
Yeah, it's a reminder that the cybersecurity landscape is constantly changing.
Constantly.
We can't afford to be complacent. We can't just rely on yesterday's solutions to protect us from tomorrow's threats.
We can't.
Speaking of staying ahead of the curve, let's turn our attention to the CMMC updates.
Okay.
These are crucial for anyone involved in government contracts.
They are.
The latest developments, including the Title 48 clause, they outline how these CMMC requirements will be incorporated into those government contracts.
Right.
And that implementation timeline is already underway.
That's right.
So if you're a government contractor, there's no time to waste.
Nope.
Now's the time to get everything organized.
Get your ducks in a row.
Yeah, but how? Should companies create enclaves to protect this sensitive data?
It's a good question.
What are the options here and what are the trade-offs?
Yeah, that's a great question and one that we will unpack in more detail.
Okay.
But before we jump into all of that, the technical solutions,
Okay.
let's take a step back for a moment
Good.
and consider the human element because, as we've seen, that's often the weakest link in the chain.
Right.
Remember the bank CEO who fell for the pig butchering
It's
scam?
hard to forget.
It highlights something really important. Even the most savvy individuals can be vulnerable to social engineering tactics.
Right.
These scams are specifically designed to exploit our emotions, our desires,
Yeah.
our very human need for connection.
So it's not just about having the latest antivirus software.
Right.
It's about being aware of those psychological tricks that these cyber criminals are using against us.
Absolutely. Cybersecurity awareness training is essential for everyone in an organization, from the
Good.
CEO all the way down to the intern.
Right.
It's about creating a culture of vigilance and empowering your employees to recognize and report those potential threats.
It's like you need to teach everyone in the kingdom how to spot a dragon in disguise.
Exactly.
Because in the digital world, those dragons really do come in many forms.
Yeah.
Phishing emails, malicious links,
Yes.
even just seemingly harmless social media posts.
All the time.
And speaking of dragons, those deepfakes are pretty terrifying.
They are.
Feels like we're on the verge of a world where seeing is no longer believing.
It's a legitimate concern, and
Yeah.
it has the potential to erode trust in ways we've never seen before.
Yeah.
They can spread misinformation, they can incite violence, even damage relationships. Imagine a world
It's scary.
where you can't be sure if a video of a political leader or even a loved one
Yeah.
is real or if it's been fabricated.
It's like stepping into a digital hall of mirrors where nothing is what it seems.
Exactly. And the technology is only going to get more sophisticated. So we need to be proactive. We need to develop tools and strategies to detect these deepfakes. We also need to sharpen our own critical thinking skills and improve our media literacy.
So it's not just about relying on technical solutions.
Right.
It's also about taking personal responsibility for educating ourselves
Absolutely.
and our communities
Right.
about the dangers of misinformation.
Right. We need to be able to discern fact from fiction, question what we see
Yeah.
and hear online, and be wary of information that seems too good or too outrageous to be true.
So we all kind of need a built-in truth detector for the digital age.
You got it.
Okay. That critical thinking is going to be more and more important. But while we're talking about those future threats, those quantum computers sound like they could crack our digital world wide open.
It's a very real threat, but it's not an immediate one.
Okay.
Quantum computers are still in their early stages of development,
Okay.
but we can't afford to wait until they're readily available to start preparing.
Right.
We need to prepare for a future where our current methods of encryption are no longer sufficient.
So it's kind of like a race against time to develop this quantum-resistant encryption before the bad guys get their hands on a quantum supercomputer.
Yeah, you could say that, yes.
Yeah.
NIST's new algorithms are a step in the right direction.
Okay.
But the transition to quantum-resistant encryption, that's going to be complex and challenging.
Yeah, this whole conversation is a reminder that the cybersecurity landscape is constantly evolving. We can't afford to be complacent.
Right.
We can't rely on yesterday's solutions to protect us from tomorrow's threats.
And that's where individual responsibility comes in. We all have a role to play in securing our digital lives, from choosing strong passwords to being wary of suspicious links to keeping our software updated.
It's like practicing good digital hygiene, like washing our cyber hands, so to speak.
I love that.
But what about the bigger picture? What are some of the broader trends that are shaping the cybersecurity landscape?
That's a great question, and one we'll explore more deeply in just a moment. But first, I want you to consider this.
Okay.
Are we at a tipping point where cybersecurity is no longer just an IT issue, but a societal imperative?
I think you're onto something there. It does feel like cybersecurity is becoming less about like firewalls and more about societal resilience. What do you think?
I think that's a really insightful observation. What's happening is a convergence of technology, geopolitics, and frankly, human nature.
Right.
We're seeing nation-state actors, cyber criminals, even hacktivists. They're blurring the lines.
So it's not just about stealing credit card numbers anymore.
No, it's about disrupting elections, crippling infrastructure.
It's about power.
It's about power, influence, and in some cases, just plain chaos.
Yeah.
The tools for these cyber attacks, they're more accessible than ever.
Right.
And the potential impact is amplified by our hyper-connected world.
Okay, so what can we do about it? It feels kind of overwhelming.
I understand how you feel. It's a lot.
Yeah?
And that's where collaboration becomes key.
Okay.
Governments, industries, and individuals, we all need to work together,
Yeah.
share information, develop best practices, and build a collective defense.
So kind of like a global cybersecurity neighborhood watch.
Exactly. We need to look out for each other, share warnings, and support those who have been targeted.
And maybe invest in some really strong digital fences.
And make sure that those fences are regularly updated and patched.
Right.
Remember, cybersecurity, it's not a destination, it's a journey.
Okay.
It's a journey of continuous improvement.
So if we had to boil all of this down to a few key takeaways for our listeners, what would they be?
Well, first and foremost, awareness is paramount. Understand the threats, stay informed about the latest scams and vulnerabilities, and don't be afraid to question what you see online.
Basically, don't click on any links from Nigerian princes promising you a fortune.
Precisely.
Okay.
Second, be proactive. Take steps to protect your digital footprint.
Oh,
Use strong passwords, enable multi-factor authentication,
okay.
and be cautious about what information you share online.
Treat your personal data like you treat your passport. Don't leave it lying around.
Exactly.
Okay.
And finally, remember that cybersecurity is a shared responsibility.
Right.
We all have a role to play in building a more secure digital world.
So let's all be good cyber citizens.
Yes.
Report suspicious activity, help others stay safe, and maybe, just maybe,
Maybe.
we can outsmart those digital dragons
I like that.
lurking out there.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Remember, in the world of cybersecurity, knowledge is power.
Well, we've thrown a lot of information at you today. I hope your brain isn't feeling too overloaded.
I know it's a lot.
What stood out to you from all of this?
Well, it is a lot to take in, but it's all incredibly important, I think. If I had to pick one thing, it's that sense of shared responsibility.
Okay.
Cybersecurity, it isn't just about technology.
Yeah.
It's about people, it's about making smart choices, being aware of the risks, and working together to create a safer digital world.
I think that's a great takeaway. We can't just rely on governments or corporations to protect us.
Right.
We all have a part to play.
Exactly. And the more informed we are, the better equipped we'll be to face these challenges head on.
Absolutely. So, listener, we encourage you to check out the links in our show notes. We've included a ton of resources to help you learn more about everything we've discussed today. And don't forget to share your thoughts on social media using #TheDeepDive. We love hearing from you. Until next time, stay safe, stay informed, and stay curious.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of like we're all building these digital fortresses,
Yeah.
We need strong walls, vigilant guards,
Right.
and a really good plan in case we're attacked.
Okay, so let's talk about those fortresses. What about these enclaves we keep hearing about?
Yeah.
Are they like the cybersecurity equivalent of a moat and a drawbridge?
Ooh, I like that analogy. Yeah, essentially, an enclave is a highly secure,
Okay.
isolated environment where you handle your most sensitive data.
Okay.
Think of it as like a separate, self-contained system within your company's network.
So it's like having a vault inside your house for your most valuable possessions.
Exactly.
Okay, so you're saying that if a company's working with like top secret government blueprints or something,
Right.
those files shouldn't be on the same server as like their holiday party photos?
Exactly. Enclaves can really help companies meet those CMMC requirements that we talked about
Right.
by providing a clear separation
Wow.
between data that needs to be protected and just, everyday business operations.
Yeah.
It's all about layers of security.
Okay, that makes sense. But I imagine setting up an enclave must be pretty complicated
It can be.
and probably expensive, right?
There are definitely costs involved,
Yeah.
both in terms of the technology and the expertise needed to set it up and maintain it.
Right.
But you have to weigh that against the potential cost of non-compliance with CMMC.
Right.
And we're talking lost contracts,
Yeah.
penalties, damage to your company's reputation. It's a lot.
So it's a classic pay now or pay later situation.
Exactly.
But are enclaves the only option for companies that are trying to improve their cybersecurity posture?
Well,
What about, I came across this in one of the articles, virtual desktop infrastructure.
yeah, VDI or virtual desktop infrastructure.
Yeah.
That's another good solution,
Okay.
particularly for smaller companies
Okay.
or companies that might have more limited IT resources.
Got it.
Essentially, what it allows is users to access a secure desktop environment that's hosted on a remote server.
Okay, so it's like instead of building your own fortress from scratch,
Right.
you're kind of renting this high security apartment in the cloud.
I like that. That's a good way to put it.
Okay, so are you saying that companies can basically outsource like the heavy lifting of cybersecurity to a specialized provider
In a way, yes.
through VDI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can offer a more cost-effective way to meet those CMMC requirements,
Right.
but it is crucial to choose a provider with a proven track record of security and reliability.
And make sure that they haven't left their own admin passwords out there online.
Exactly. Due diligence is key when it comes to cybersecurity
Yeah,
partnerships. You're trusting these providers with some of your most sensitive information,
absolutely.
so you need to be sure that they're up to the task.
Okay, that makes sense. But let's zoom out a little bit
Okay.
from those technical details.
There.
What about the human element in all of this?
Yeah.
We've talked about how that's often the weakest link.
Often. Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered some practical steps that individuals and organizations can take to bolster their cybersecurity.
We have.
But before we move on, I just want to go back to those quantum computers that we talked about.
Sure.
It sounds like they could just crack our digital world wide open.
Uh,
Is that something we should be really worried about?
it's a valid concern, but it's not an immediate threat.
Okay.
Quantum computers are still in their early stages of development,
Okay.
but we can't afford to wait until they're readily available to start preparing.
Right. We need to get ahead of it.
We do. We need to prepare for a future where current encryption methods are just no longer enough.
So it's like a race against time to develop quantum-resistant encryption before bad actors get their hands on a quantum supercomputer.
It's a good way to think about it.
Okay.
NIST's new algorithms are a step in the right direction. But this transition to quantum-resistant encryption, that is going to be complex and challenging.
It feels like a lot of this just comes down to the fact that the cybersecurity landscape is constantly evolving.
It is.
We can't sit back and rely on yesterday's solutions to protect us from tomorrow's threats.
Absolutely true. And it's not just about organizations and governments taking action.
Right.
It's also about individuals taking ownership of their own digital security.
Yeah, we all have a role to play.
We do.
Absolutely. So what would you say are some of the most important things that individuals can do to protect their digital lives?
Well, one of the most effective things you can do is choose strong, unique passwords
Okay.
for all of your online accounts
Right.
and enable multi-factor authentication.
Okay.
Whenever it's available, it adds that extra layer of security that makes it so much harder for hackers to access your accounts, even if they have your password.
It's great advice and something that everyone can do pretty easily. What else?
Be mindful of what information you're sharing online. Think twice before you post personal details like your address,
Right.
your phone number, your birth date on social media,
Yeah.
and always be wary of suspicious links or emails.
Right.
If something seems too good to be true, it probably is.
It's like practicing good digital hygiene, washing our cyber hands, so to speak.
That's a great way to put it.
Right.
And remember, cybersecurity is a shared responsibility.
Yes.
If you see something suspicious, if you think you might have been targeted by a scam,
Yeah.
don't be afraid to report it.
Okay, and speaking of that bigger picture,
Yeah.
we were talking earlier about this idea that cybersecurity is becoming less of a purely technical issue and more of like a societal imperative.
Right.
And I'm curious to hear more of your thoughts on that. What are some of those broader trends that are shaping the cybersecurity landscape as we move into the future?
That's a great question, and it's something I'm very passionate about. I think we're at a pivotal moment where cybersecurity is no longer just an IT problem. It's a global challenge that impacts every aspect of our lives. Let me give you a few examples.
Okay, so you were about to give us some examples of how cybersecurity is becoming this like broader societal issue.
Yeah, well, one trend that's really concerning is the rise of state-sponsored cyber attacks.
Okay.
We're seeing governments increasingly using cyber warfare
Wow.
as a tool to achieve their political and economic goals.
So it's not just about stealing data or money anymore.
No.
It's about using these cyber attacks to like influence and destabilize entire nations.
Exactly.
That's scary.
It is, and it's not just governments that are using these cyber attacks for
Right.
their own agendas.
Right.
We're also seeing this rise of hacktivist groups
Right.
who are using their skills to promote certain social or political causes.
So sometimes those causes align with like the public good, and sometimes they're more disruptive
Yeah,
and destructive.
right. It really just depends.
Okay, so how do we even begin to address these like larger trends? It feels like we're talking about forces that are way beyond the control of any one person or organization.
You're right. It is a complex and multifaceted challenge.
Yeah.
But I believe that one of the most important things we can do is foster greater collaboration.
Okay.
Governments, industry leaders, and cybersecurity experts
Yeah.
need to work together to share information, develop those best practices,
Yeah.
and build a collective defense.
So kind of like a global cybersecurity neighborhood watch.
Exactly. We need to look out for each other, share warnings, support those who've been targeted,
Yeah.
and be proactive about educating the public
Okay.
about those risks and how to mitigate them.
It sounds like we all need to step up and become better cyber citizens.
I think that's a great way to put it. Cybersecurity isn't just about technology.
Right.
It's about people,
Yeah.
making smart choices, being aware of the risks, and working together to create a safer digital world for everyone.
So let's recap. If we had to boil all of this down to a few key takeaways for our listeners, what would they be?
Well, first and foremost, awareness is key.
Okay.
Understand the threats. Stay informed about the latest scams and vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to question what you see online.
Right. If something seems too good to be true, it probably is.
Exactly. Don't click on any links promising you a fortune from some long-lost relative.
Exactly.
Second, be proactive.
Okay.
Take steps to protect your digital footprint, use strong passwords,
Right.
enable multi-factor authentication whenever possible.
Yeah.
Be mindful of what information you share online.
Treat your personal data like you would your passport. Don't leave it lying around.
Exactly.
Okay.
And finally, remember that cybersecurity is a shared responsibility.
All right.
We all have a role to play in building a more secure digital world.
So let's be good cyber citizens, report that suspicious activity, help others stay safe, and maybe, just maybe, we can outsmart those digital dragons lurking out there.
I love that image. And remember, in the world of cybersecurity, knowledge is power.
Well, listener, we've covered a lot of ground today. We've explored everything from data breaches and scams to emerging technologies and the evolving threat landscape. I hope you're walking away with a better understanding of the challenges we face in this digital age.
I hope so too.
And we encourage you to explore the links in our show notes. We've included tons of resources to help you learn more about everything we've discussed today.
Absolutely.
We'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts on social media using #TheDeepDive. What resonated with you the most from our conversation? What questions do you still have? Until next time, stay safe, stay informed, and stay curious.